What's your favorite song in Wicked?
Oh, it's got to be For Good. I think
I would.
I don't know I don't know how it wouldn't be that. It just means a lot to me. It's very, very important song in my life. So we revere that movie. So we only wanted to quote it and reference it in the most, how should I say this, in the most respectful way possible, right?
The Broadway Maven recently welcomed Winnie Holzman, the book writer for Wicked.
Welcome to the Broadway Maven, Miss Holzman.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here.
So my first question is about all those wonderful terms that you put in the script, like confusifying, scandaliciousness, and innuendo, outuendo. Those are not Gregory Maguire's book. So it must be, did you write them into the script as you were writing, or did you go back and put them in?
Well, it was an idea I had from the very beginning, which was how would we remember as we were watching everything unfold, how would we remember that this wasn't happening in New Jersey or Omaha? You know, how would we remember that this was in Oz, a mythical, magical place, you know, that we all have heard about as children? How would we remember that? You know, after all, they're going to college, you know? So I wanted to just have little moments. It hopefully isn't too many, but sort of sprinkled in and out delicately. I wanted to have moments where the language reflected something unusual, something a little bit different, something a little sprightly even, and that reminded us that this is a magical Oz, that this isn't our world.
You know, Madame Morrible uses them and Glinda uses them. Why doesn't Elphaba use them?
Well, that's a very interesting question, David. I mean, truthfully, I think are you positive she never uses it ever?
I looked very
because I think because what's interesting for me is Stephen and I are writing the movie now, and I think actually she does once in a while say something in the movie like that, because it wasn't a conscious decision. Okay. The conscious decision I made was that the wizard doesn't ever use them, because the wizard comes from our world. He doesn't ever use them. But I really respect your detail-oriented mind, because, you know, I think what I might have been doing unconsciously is just letting Elphaba be more serious-minded. She's the best student. She's in a way, the more intellectual person in the room. And so, you know, when you're writing something, are any of you writers, or am I talking to some writers? Yeah. Great. So you know that one of the things we're doing is, as writers, is we're always trying to help the audience understand what the story is. Yeah. And something like using that kind of language can be fun for a moment, but if we overuse it or give it to too many people, it can become distracting. It can distract from the point of the moment, you know. So thank you so much for saying that you love my so-called life. So anyway, I don't know if that answers your question. And then once I started doing it in the script, Stephen, who's such an incredible, brilliant songwriter and such an incredible collaborator, he just started taking them and using them a little bit in the lyrics, like I say, sparingly. But so then it sort of became a thing, you know.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
When the Wizard in Wicked says they call it history, right? Is an attempt to mimic the Wizard of Oz, saying they call it a diploma?
No, I mean, there's plenty of moments when we're playing off the Wizard of Oz, as I'm sure you're well aware. And we're having fun with the Wizard of Oz, or we're referencing it in a different way. But this was more like, you know, Stephen wrote that, and he's making a point, a very serious point about, you know, that history is written by the winners. We believe all sorts of things that aren't true. We call it history. Who writes history? And this is something that, as we all know, is very apt for our time and is very important right now, currently. Who gets to say what actually happened? If everyone pretends that something didn't happen, like a virus, or that it's not real, does it become true? Well, it becomes true for some people. So he was trying to bring out that point, what is truth? What is really history? And what gets told to us as history?
So I have a question about the word wicked. How is it from evil?
How is it? Oh gosh, David, you have really good questions.
Thank you.
This is a primarily, not primarily, but this is potentially a partly Jewish audience, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so something that's interesting is when we went to the first time Wicked was done in Germany, it's been translated into German, and it's been done more than once, and it's actually playing in Germany currently in Berlin. Our translator that we worked with said to us, to Stephen and I, there is no word for wicked in German. And the same thing happened to us. Our jaws dropped. And Stephen and I she wasn't in the room. I think it was over email. And Stephen and I turned to each other. We went, maybe they need to get one, maybe they should have gotten one. And
Yes.
we had a very strong reaction to that as Jews, but it made me realize, it made me interested in what's the difference, Well, evil, what evil is? Evil is like having the soul being, obliterated in a way. The soul has gotten so damaged or hidden that it's not accessible, right? And it's just pure brutality and cruelty, right?
Mm-hmm.
But wicked has a connotation in English anyway of being more playful. Because wicked can also mean, something sexy, like.
Says it after she gets together with Fiyero for the first time. I feel wicked. She couldn't say evil. That wouldn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there is a difference in the two. I mean, look, I'm not a linguist, and I didn't just look this up in the dictionary. I mean, you're probably a better teacher than me, so you can explain it with more depth.
Yeah.
But to me, it was a very important one thing that I did very consciously. Well, both of us did. Stephen and I did it together. Is we use the word good all the time throughout the show in different interesting ways. And there's very few times we say the word wicked. We save it for very important moments. Yeah. And one is when Elphaba says, for the first time, I feel wicked. Here she's been labeled a wicked witch and, hated and decried all through her own country. And she suddenly feels wicked because she slept with her best friend's guy, basically. Right. And there's another moment when she uses the word wicked. Well, I use the word wicked as a writer, and it's when, at the end of Act 1, you probably are way ahead of me, but when Morrible makes her announcement and gets everyone against her, she says, "This wicked witch," and we say, we saved it for this climactic moment. You see what I mean? Yeah. So as writers, Stephen and I are very, I'm sure you're all aware of this, you realize that our medium is words, like as if we were painting. And so you're very careful which words you use, in what context, and you save certain words that are very powerful.
Yeah, one of my friends pointed out to me how in Annie doesn't say leaping lizards until well into the second act. People are there, they know that's her catchphrase.
They know it's coming, right?
They hold on to it. And you do that with a lot of the stories about Dorothy and her friends. You make us wait for it. Now, is it fair to say that your show is more an adaptation of the idea of the book than it is?
Yes, I think very well. That's apt. I think you're once again hitting the nail on the head completely. Because I think what happened is I know what happened. First of all, we were captivated by the idea of the book. The idea that this famous villainess, one of the most famous villainesses in literature and in children's literature, certainly, and in the movies. She's such a villain, she doesn't even have a name. She's just called the Wicked Witch. She doesn't even have a name. The idea that Gregory Maguire had was to make her the heroine, the protagonist of the story, and tell things from her point of view.
Right.
We thought, Stephen and I still get chills when I describe that. I think that's one of the most exciting
project. You wanted to work on it before you even read the book.
Correct. And Stephen and I felt that was so gripping. We were both captivated by that. But when we read the novel, it's not that we don't admire him as a writer, but we didn't look at the novel going, oh, we've got to put this on stage. We've got to take the novel and first of all, it would have been, a 6-7 hour, musical. But secondly, we honestly, that wasn't his story that he was telling wasn't the story exactly we wanted to tell. And we were very, very, very lucky because Gregory trusted us enough to give us permission to adapt it freely.
Yeah.
And I think I remember Stephen, I wasn't there, but I remember Stephen telling me he promised Gregory we would be true to the spirit of your book. But we're not going to be true to the details of your plot, but we're going to be true to the spirit of your book. And I think we accomplished that because as anyone knows who's seen it, it is his novel had a political content. And our show also has a political and a social consciousness message, although, not everybody maybe realizes that.
Yeah. So
I think in the end, we were faithful to the ideas of his book, but we were not faithful at all to the way his plot unfolds.
Well,
we create
something that he didn't do, which is you give us more about our friends from the movie, right?
Yes, because we.
If Fiyero is the scarecrow in the book, and he's not, right?
Yes, exactly. It will also, as you well know, Glinda or Galinda or Glinda isn't in love with Fiyero in the book at all. She isn't having anything to do with Fiyero in the book. Fiyero has an affair Fiyero's married in the book to someone else, and Elphaba has an affair with him, but they're really very different people, kind of. We needed permission to really use our own imaginations and our own taste, because honestly, what else are you going to do if you know what I mean? Like, we couldn't slavishly take his plot and his characters. It just wasn't that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah. Well, one of the remarkable aspects of the Wicked phenomenon is all the teenage girls that, especially online, that are obsessed by the show. And they say, are you a Galinda or are you an Elphaba? And they take little quizzes, right? Are you a Galinda or an Elphaba?
Actually, to be honest, I am an interesting mixture of both.
Okay.
Like my daughter sometimes teases me and calls me Winda instead of Glinda.
Okay.
But I am really an Elphaba. I have both in me because I think every writer in a funny way is an Elphaba, because the nature of a writer is to be an outsider in many ways, to be an outsider and to be looking and taking in, almost like a sponge, absorbing what's going on around her. But I do have a Glinda aspect.
Good. So I have a couple more questions, and then we'll open it up to students. If students have questions, they should put them in the chat.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any question.
Thank you. So you had the blessing of working with one of the most talented composer lyricists that Broadway has ever had the pleasure of.
Yeah, it's an incredible honor and blessing. You used the right word. It's been a blessing in my life.
So to what extent, we've been on a book writer kick here at the Broadway Maven. I told you we had Alfred Urey, we had Dick Scanlon, who was about Thirdly a Modern Millie. And so as I've been talking to book writers, I've been thinking more about your collaboration with the musicians. Do you need to know any music theory? Does it help to know stuff about how music is put together, or it doesn't matter?
Well, I mean, I'm first of all, the comments are so sweet. Thank you, Linda. I'm not trained in music,
Yeah.
but I will say this about myself. I'm very rhythmic.
Okay.
And I use my poetry all the time. And in fact, that's how I started. I kind of, in college, that was my major, writing poetry. And I have written lyrics. I did a little known, I wrote a musical with my friend David Evans. This is a little known musical called Birds of Paradise. And I wrote the lyrics.
The adaptation of Chekhov's The Seagull. That's a question.
So as somebody who's written lyrics, I have a lot of understanding about songwriting that's intrinsic because I've actually done it. Now, I'm not saying I'm a musician, far from it,
Right.
And I cannot sing at all. But there is such a thing as having kind of an instinctual understanding about songwriting. I think that I do think I have. I don't think it's prerequisite, but I think it helps. Another thing that I think helped me anyway is, book writing. I don't know if Alfred mentioned this, but there's a quality to it where you have to find ways to distill down things, because music takes a lot of time. Music sort of expands through time, and you have a lot of songs that takes up a lot of time. So the scenes have to have brevity. They can't go on and on and on. And I think my poetry writing helped with that, and also my screenwriting, and I include TV, because when you write for the screen, you also tend to write smaller scenes.
Yeah.
You don't write long, expansive, endless scenes unless you're Aaron Sorkin, who does that really well. But most people they can't do it. Yeah. Because the screen sort of demands a shorter scene. Right.
So
I think those helped.
About Birds of Paradise, lasted a few weeks off Broadway. At the time, did you imagine that someday?
Well, I think it was yeah.
That was what I had written down. Maybe I'm wrong, but
no, it's okay. It's about 2 months.
Okay. Did you think that maybe you'd come back and write a smash hit, or you would?
At the time, I'll be honest, I was kind of devastated, and because I've been working on it with David for so long, and I was very it's just hard. It was emotionally hard, but once I got over it, which I did, within a few months, or a year maybe, I started to write. For TV, like you mentioned, 30 something. I got lucky and I met these incredible people, these two guys who became my mentors, Marshall Herskovitz and Ed Zwick, and they gave me a job writing for 30 something. And I really fell in love with writing TV, and that really healed me. And I wasn't thinking about musicals, but an interesting detail about my life. I don't know if you're interested in little details like this, but about a month before Stephen called me about Wicked, I said to somebody who was in a moment of great emotion, I said, boy, it would really make me sad if I never wrote another musical again. And I sort of realized it at the moment. Like, I had been happy and just writing for TV and really feeling fulfilled. And it kind of hit me like, wow, I hope that's not true. I hope I do write a musical again someday. And it came true.
The Broadway Maven offers a free online class every Monday at noon and 8 p.m. Visit thebroadwaymaven.com for details.
Did you know that it was going to be this big? Wicked.
No, there's no. When it started to, when we started to have a clue was we had an out-of-town tryout in San Francisco. I don't know if you know that, Jeremy. And when we were in San Francisco, there's actually a cute story, which is that Stephen and I, just like you see in almost like in a movie, the cliche, we were rewriting a lot, during the day. We were very busy rewriting and taking notes and having worries about, things that weren't working right, And one day, Stephen is walking near the theater in the morning, and he's thinking hard about the show, and he sees a big group of people crowded around the theater, and he's literally said to me, he thought to himself, did a brick fall down and hurt someone? Why would everyone be crowded around the theater? And this was like the second or third preview. And we hadn't done any publicity really. And he told me the story because he found out later they were lining up to buy tickets. Yeah. And he sort of looked at me, and we had this feeling like, wait a minute. You have to fulfill people's, you have to have something that makes people leave that theater feeling like they really had an interesting and galvanizing and emotional experience. And that's not something you can do, by just snapping your fingers. That's not a prep. You have to, that's every single line, every note, every moment, He had gone to my first musical, the one that only lasted 2 months, and he had liked a lot of it. So he had a generally positive impression of me, but we had never really met. I think we might've said hello to each other once. And then a mutual friend at Disney put us together, brought us to lunch together, hoping that we would maybe do a Disney animated together. And what happened is we ended up talking about this book called Wicked. And he was trying to get the rights, and it took him another 6 or 8 months, or maybe a horrible year, I can't even remember. And then he called me out of the blue. We basically didn't really know each other. And he just said, I think you should sit down, because I think I got them to agree to let us do it as a musical on Broadway. And maybe you should read the book now. Because I had never read the book. I just knew the premise. And I thought the premise was genius, like I just said. I also wanted to answer the question. I saw a question about the movie, and yes, Steve and I are in the midst of writing the movie, and we're very thrilled because our director is John Chu. I don't know if you know who that is, but he directed In the Heights and also Crazy Rich Asians. And he's a wonderful, incredible director. So we're very excited to have him as our director.
Terrific. Now let's.
And we have cast the 2 lead roles. I don't know if you know that.
Go ahead. Who are
Ariana Grande, and Cynthia Erivo is playing Elphaba. Ariana is playing Glinda, and Cynthia Erivo, the great Cynthia Erivo, is playing Elphaba. So what was that question about being motivated? How do you get motivated?
What do you do to stay motivated during writing?
That's such a good question. Did that come from a writer?
I don't know. That comes from Jackson. We could ask him.
You a writer?
Hold on.
It's a very important question. I mean, it's your job as a writer to find ways to keep yourself inspired, and it's not going to just happen by accident. It's something that you cultivate, and you have hard days. There's definitely. Oh, hi, Jackson. Are you a writer?
Oh.
Are you yourself a writer?
Yes, I am aspiring. I'm an aspiring composer, lyricist, and sometimes the moments
always going to be times of discouragement. That's normal, and it doesn't mean you're not a good writer. It doesn't mean that at all. It's normal, and what you do is you find ways to. Oh, it's almost like a relationship. If you've ever been in a love relationship, which I'm sure you have been, there are times when you look at your partner and you go, "Oh, What am I doing with this person? And then what you do if you're in a good relationship is you start to remember all the reasons you fell in love with that person and all the incredible things that person has been to you in your life. And you purposely remember it so that it can feed you, and you don't focus on the negative. You don't focus on the thoughts of like, oh, I'm not that good at this. I mean, no, believe me, nobody's that good at it. I mean, we all have to work incredibly hard to do it, to do a good job, It's just hard. That's the real truth, Jackson. It's just a hard thing to do because it takes a lot of devotion. But at the same time, you sort of ask yourself, well, what else is there to do? What else do I want to devote my life to? I'd rather be a writer, and even if I fail, I'd rather just keep going. And that's what, look at me. My first musical did quote unquote fail, but it taught me so much.
Yeah.
And Stephen wouldn't probably have asked me to do Wicked if it hadn't been for that quote unquote failure. So was it a failure? You know what I mean? Not even. This was one of the hardest things I guess I've ever done. And writing this movie from Wicked, the play, Wicked, the Broadway musical, has been incredibly hard for me. None of this comes easy. I don't find this easy. I'm not going, oh, well, I'll just dash that out.
Well, how many times have you read Mr. Maguire's book?
Well, I don't keep going back to the book because, David, that's not it for me anymore.
Just a small note.
Once in a while, I'll open it up in the writing of the movie, I've opened it up once in a while for a name or I can't even explain it. Once in a while, I'll open it. I won't read it. I don't think I've read it, really read it more than once through, but then I've dipped into it a lot, if you see what I mean.
Sure.
But really what it stopped being about, with all due respect to Gregory, with all due respect, which I, do respect him greatly, but it stopped being about the book. It was me and Stephen looking at each other going, what do we want to put on stage? What do we wish the musical would be? It was all about what we wanted to watch happen.
Are there any major differences between writing for stage and writing for TV? And if so, what are they? And is there a sort of mental switch you have to turn on and off? Thank you kindly.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. It's a complicated question. I'll try to be simpler with it. Oh, hi. Basically, it isn't a switch. Basically, I'm thinking about the story, the characters. What's the scene going to be about? What do we need to learn from the scene? What would be an interesting twist to that? You know what I mean? I'm not really going stage, screen, but of course, certain things, like on stage, somebody will literally tell you when you're in tech, well, she needs 3 more minutes. She's never going to get into that costume, or they'll say, so, you know what I mean? Or when you're writing a TV show, and this is something that shocked me when I first started writing TV, I thought everything in TV was just money. They just had plenty of money. No, people will say to you, we can't afford that location. You have to take that scene and put it on one of the sets we already have. We can't afford to go to a laundromat. So whatever you had idea for a laundromat, use something we already have built. Yeah. That's a typical thing, so there's challenges with both where you have to adapt, but basically what you're doing is telling a story. The thing I'm leaving out with a musical is you're really, really, really making a platform for those magnificent songs.
Right.
So you're always bringing the characters to the moment when they're going to maybe sing, hopefully, right?
What's your favorite song in Wicked?
Oh, it's got to be For Good. I think I don't know how it wouldn't be that, but it just means a lot to me. It's very, very important song in my life.
Was there trouble adapting to film? I feel like there's just so much within the plot to unpack into a film in order to keep the originality and the same flowing plot structure.
Yeah, it's been we've been working on it for a long time, on and off, and it's been a big challenge. I won't lie. It's been a big challenge. But I think anytime you do anything that's important to you, first of all, it is a challenge. And this means a lot to us. And, you know, we're changing certain things for the movie because it's a movie. You know, you don't want to, I mean, we didn't want to just throw that musical onto the screen, you know, without rethinking it. And some of it's really been rethought. But some of it, of course, is just like in the musical.
I love that you like my questions too. That was really fun.
Yeah, you have great questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Should I go?
You're welcome to hang out. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I see Wicked as the Bechdel test musical. For those who don't know what
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
the Bechdel test is, in this movie, musical, book, are there two women who talk to each other and don't talk about a man? And it is shocking how few properties pass the Bechdel test. But
well, they do end up having a quarrel about a man, so I don't know if we would qualify, but
they do talk to each other.
that's not there, but that man doesn't end up defining their friendship,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
It's almost like a momentary problem that gets surpassed. It get past it.
These are great students. They really
Oh,
are.
I can tell. Really love you. You asked wonderful questions, and to all of the writers in the room, just remember, just keep writing. It's the key to everything. Because you know why? Because even, let's say, and I don't wish this on anyone, but let's say you do experience, like, first of all, I experience rejection. All writers experience rejection. All writers. The writers you most admire have experienced tons of rejection. Let that make you feel better. Like let that feed you and make you feel like it's okay. It's okay to experience rejection. It's okay to fail, quote unquote fail. Well, all that matters is that you keep writing. And why do you keep writing? Really, it's a personal thing. It's because you love it and you want to write. It's not about anything that the world confers on you. Like, it's not about gaining anything from the world. It's a personal thing that you yourself have decided to do. And it's a choice that you make all the time.
Unlike many musicals, and as a matter of fact, most musicals, unlike them, Wicked has a really strong second act. And I'm wondering, was that harder to write, second act?
First act was much harder.
Really?
There were things in the second act that were hard. Everything's hard.
Yeah.
That's been my message throughout the class. Nothing's easy. None of this stuff is easy. But the first act was much harder. We sort of defied the cliche of second act book trouble, and I think it had to do with just the number Dancing Through Life, and how it sort of dances you through a series of situations and vignettes. That didn't just happen. We didn't always know how to do that, and it took us a few tries. It took Stephen several numbers. He wrote different songs for that beat, and also the whole beat with Loathing, when they first connected as roommates. We had very, very many versions of that, trying to strike the right tone, get it done with brevity, but also a lot of fun. Those kind of sections where a lot happens quickly, you might say, or fairly quickly, took a lot of work. That was a lot of work. I mean, it was all a lot of work, I hasten to add, but I have memories of doing that over and over and over and over again with different versions. And finally, we found Dancing Through Life I think we finally found it out after San Francisco.
Mhm. Do you enjoy seeing the show now? Or have you seen it too many times?
That's a smart question too. It depends on the mood I'm in, but usually, yeah. I mean, I don't go very often, so I have to say yes, because it's very rare for me to see it.
Okay.
So, especially now with COVID
Sure.
times, haven't seen it in long. Like I was actually looking forward to going. It's going to be in Costa Mesa, the tour, and I was thinking of going with my daughter. Her girlfriend has never seen it, so we were going to go in February, and I was excited just to thank them, just to thank the cast for doing such a great job under difficult, arduous conditions. You know, and I feel that way, of course, about the Broadway cast. They're tremendous. I do enjoy it, but you know, it's you also look at it and you always want, it's hard sometimes because especially now I'm writing the movie, it's weird almost to see it because I'm in the head of the movie now, and I'll look at the show and I'll be like, oh, it's that way,
Right.
because we've made some changes.
Yeah.
So it's like it'll almost shock me a little bit in a funny way,
Right.
I mean, all of it's a blessing,
Yeah.
It's never hard like a it's a delight to see the show, but I'll have different strange thoughts cross my mind. You know what I mean?
Does some of this work come to you in dreams or meditation?
Well, that's an insightful question. I mean, sometimes, not often, but I do meditate. I do meditate as a way of trying to center myself and calm myself, and I pray. And sometimes when you're doing that, insights will come to your mind. It's almost more like when you quiet down and calm yourself down, that's when insights can come. But also insights can come, the writers in the room probably know this, just through washing the dishes or taking a shower, because sometimes when you're doing a sort of a mindless, repetitive task that you've done all your life, your mind kind of relaxes, and that's when you can get like a really good idea.
Mhm.
How did you come up with with quoting the line, "There's no place like home"?
Well, where do you think? I mean, it's from the original Wizard of Oz movie, which I grew up.
I think that's
What?
how did you decide where to put it in the show?
Well, that's something. First of all, it's interesting. That's very carefully done. Like I was describing before, you don't just sort of go, let's use it. Like it has to be in an appropriate, interesting way. You want to use it in a way that has some depth, that has some spin on it. So you're not just, otherwise the audience is going, it's sort of like a cheap thing to say. You know what I mean? I mean, it has to be done with, did Yip Hartberg's family contact you? No, I mean, I actually know Yip Hartberg's family, not to brag, but I do know them. They only contacted me to be like happy and excited about it. I don't know if you meant that. If you meant, did they contact me like, oh, it's on TNT. That's cool. Like the Wizard of Oz, Stephen and I are pretty much the same generation. He's a little bit older than me. We grew up watching it. It was part of our childhood. So we revere that movie. So we only wanted to quote it and reference it in the most, how should I say this, in the most respectful way possible, right? And we wanted to do it in a way that would add to the plot of our, to add to the characters of our show, not in a cheap way, right? I think that describes it. So that was the kind of decision making we were doing. You see what I mean?
Right. Now, I want to come back to, as somebody who analyzes art, you don't get the final say on what the art means. And so I think when the wizard says they call it history, I think that's just like the wizard. He says to the scarecrow, they call it a diploma, and he says to the they call it a
No, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Stephen was thinking that, and he just never told me. And David, you're right. You have every right. Everyone who sees anything has every right to their own reaction, to their own beliefs about it. absolutely. That's part of what we do is we put it out there, and then people need to have their own feelings and their own response.
That's one of the fun things we do in here. Another question, we talk about word painting sometimes. Is it defying gravity? Is that on purpose? Defying goes up because you're defying the
I'm
gravity?
sure it is. I mean, I'm sure it is in terms of his depth of insight and knowledge of songwriting. I mean, he's, as you were saying, he's a master. He truly is a master. So something like that isn't just going to happen. And he's like, oh, I don't know. Like, he's purposeful in his, I think some of that stuff, because he's so masterful, comes naturally to him.
Right.
If he's
right. That must have been a real treat to be able to work with such a talented person and create such a very special show.
He absolutely made me he changed me for good, David.
My first Patreon supporter will be recognized in a future video. And here's another video I think you'll like.